Hello, and welcome to Product and Artist Management's Week 1 Go-To Training Session. This is our archive, so you just have Kate here on her own. I'm your course director, and I wanted to take you through our content that we covered in our live session this week. So, just to let you know what our topics are going to be for today, I wanted to start a little bit by talking about a band called CCR, Creedence Clearwater Revival, and what we can learn from them. Then I want to go into touring and live events and some of the unique challenges and things that we should think about in terms of when we're an artist manager, things to consider when we're going to be taking our group out on the road. We're then going to complete our session today with a review of your live event project. Now, if you are online, this is an individual project, and if you're on campus, this is a group project. And this project is the same. The requirements for the project are the same whether you're on campus or online, and so we will review that as well. So, without further ado, let me go ahead and get started. Okay, so as promised, I wanted to talk today about Creedence Clearwater Revival, just to kind of kick us off. As we started in the course, and you guys have gotten all into your reading assignments and all the things that you're doing for the class, a lot of what is talked about in artist management is we have some great examples in the book of lessons to learn from, so that you don't repeat the mistakes that other people have made. A great example of a group to really learn from. And on campus, we're going to have a discussion about this, and online, you're going to be having a paper that you're writing about this week. But is about the band Creedence Clearwater Revival, also known as CCR. This is a group that, at their time, they were one of the most popular bands in the country. They were the headliners of Woodstock, for instance. But because of different interpersonal, legal, and interpersonal, legal, and financial issues that impacted the band, they were only together for a very, very short time. So they kind of like burned bright, and then their light was out in a very short time. So a lot of what we've really been doing these in the foundation beginning of our class here is to get into a lot of the specifics about, what are ways through strong communication between the artist and manager and the artist or the band members. How can we build on a strong foundation to prevent issues that will later cause us to potentially break up down the road. A main factor that I talk a lot about is about how the relationship between the artist manager and the artist is a lot like a marriage. It's a very close relationship. Your income streams are tied together. Your future, as far as your career paths, are tied together, because the artist covers the craft, and the artist manager covers the business aspect. So the two are tied together. And without that strong basis of communication, what can happen is what happens in a lot of relationships, where if you don't have a strong communication, strong loyalty, trust, then you can break up down the road. And a real cautionary tale with CCR is that, even if you're one of the most popular groups in the country, you can completely implode and break up. So really a great example that we'll be discussing both on campus and online this week regarding those interpersonal, financial, and legal issues that can impact a group, such as that, and ways that we can take some of the learnings that we have from artist management and guard against, things that can go wrong happening. So if you have watched the video that I've posted on the online community board, or in campus, we watched the video about the wagon wheel approach that Jeff Dorenfield reviewed. A very important spoke of the wagon wheel is in what an artist manager works on behalf of an artist for, is on touring and live events, and on the business logistics of putting those tours or live events together. And so that's what I'm going to choose to talk about today in our week 1 go-to training session here. And then at the end of this review, I'm going to point out several resources that I have available for you guys online. And then I will review your final or your live event project as well. So let me go ahead and get started. Okay, so there's some questions about things like, as far as venue appearances, those can apply to many types of artists. Just to name a few of those, it doesn't have to do with um, just music acts, for instance. There's a lot of different types of live performances. Basically, some of the types of groups that require venues for live performances are, uh, you know, comedians, motivational speakers, dancers, whatever discipline, you really need to make sure that that venue adds to your artist's stature and helps them further their career goals. The book has some great content about this topic and talking about, for instance, markets that, your artists can play that they can help gain them additional exposure. Certain venues that are tied to certain events that might have, be near industry events or things like that, that you might be able to get, the attention of someone who may be able to help further your artist's career. That's why it's an important consideration for your live event project that you really consider the venue and how the venue would help improve your event and improve the exposure that your artists would get. Live performances are also a great way to be discovered. So, in our course, we're going to talk about several different types of contracts, also commonly referred to as agreements, because as you learned last month, when you have an agreement between an artist and an artist manager, for instance, that's an artist manager agreement. You've negotiated out all your deal points, determined who. What are the important things for both parties to bring to the table, negotiated any places that you were off, and agreed ultimately on where you wanted to go forward. Contracts for live performance are similar in that way, in that they involve a lot of standard information. There's a lot of what are called like boilerplate or template contracts for live performance. Most of them will have a lot of standard information on the front end. Of course, where you have your parties involved, your location of the event, address, date, time, rates, etc. All those things are similar. But that doesn't mean that just because those things are similar, that you should not, when you receive a performance contract, oftentimes when you're talking about doing live performances, if you're an artist manager working with a smaller act, and for instance, you're not in one of the two states where you're prevented from doing bookings for your artist. If you're an artist manager, those two states are New York and California. Then you actually, would probably do a lot of these on your own, just because there's not a lot of funds for groups or for outside parties such as a booking agency to work with you. But if you have a larger group and you're booking multiple dates and those types of things, some considerations that you would have would be in what markets am I going to go through so I can maximize my big nights, my Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights. How can I minimize my expenses such as like gasoline, things like that, and just wear and tear on my band with like crisscrossing regions and things like that. So a lot of times when you get to the end where you actually have these contracts that we're talking about, and you would receive that standard information, it can be really confusing. Like, what did I agree to? What day? And that type of thing. And you really have to just lay out that standard information on those different agreements in front of you and recheck every piece of it. Check for things like, for instance, if it was to say, you know, this is on, Friday, April 1st, make sure that you open a calendar. Oftentimes you'll be doing things that are far into the future. Okay, so open up a calendar and just make sure that Friday, April 1st is in fact a Friday. What if it's a Thursday and, there's a mistake there? You want to make sure that you can minimize any mistakes or typos and those kind of things that can happen. And a lot of that stuff can happen in kind of what people consider boilerplate, because that doesn't get checked as closely as some of the other areas. Okay. Also, make sure you check standard information for things like that the location that's being provided is actually the location of the venue and not, for instance, the location of the venue's offices, because that can run into a real issue when your group shows up to actually do a sound check, etc., and they're in the wrong location. Okay. You also just double check things like the amount of time that was agreed to that you would perform. Make sure it's the right amount that you had agreed to, and then make sure that the rate, of course, is outlined there as what you had agreed to as well. And make sure that as far as like an et cetera on this, for instance, is like, in what way will you be paid? Will you be paid by something? A kind of a standard approach that's taken right now is that if you have an agreed to rate, that half of that rate is paid through something called ACH, which stands for Automated Clearinghouse. It's paid through ACH, which is just a bank transfer prior to your performance date. So let's say, for instance, you were playing on a Saturday night, that would have to be processed on the Friday before, by a certain time. You might say by 4 p.m. Eastern or something like that. Make sure you always put into place Eastern time, Standard Time, etc., or Eastern time, Central Time, etc., so that it's understood what time zone people are talking about. Okay. Um, you might say, I want half of the payment through ACH, the day, prior day prior, and then we'll receive the remaining of the payment probably in a cashier's check or in a certified check. Sometimes it's cash, oftentimes it's cash, that will be received, before going on stage for the event, for instance. Okay. Other things that are in these agreements are clauses that are special clauses that apply really just to venue contracts. An example of one of those is called the force majeure clause, and basically that refers to acts of God. And what that means is that an artist, for instance, if there's some type of an act of God, like let's talk about, for instance, a tornado, a hurricane, something of a large scale nature, like a couple of years ago, there were several force majeure contract clauses that were enacted on several European music festivals because of that volcanic ash cloud that was over Europe that prevented a lot of airlines from flying to Europe. So these types of clauses, basically, what they do is that they release the artist from liability in terms of the penalty payment that they would have to pay if they do not show up for their booked date. Okay, so just to tell you a little bit about that, in most standard contracts, a venue will put in place an amount that is a standard amount that would basically be, if they're, if a touring act did not show up for their show, this would be a penalty amount. Now, what that penalty amount was really there to cover is, think of it in terms of, if you were the venue owner, you're in business to sell food and beverage to the people who are attending live events at those venues, right? And so the issue is that if someone doesn't show up, oftentimes people think, oh, it's just a penalty payment for like having to refund tickets. That's not it really. It's a part of it, but it's not really it overall. It basically means that that venue gave up an opportunity night to sell food and beverage to all of the people that they anticipated attending your event. That's why they have live acts, is so that people will come to their venue to buy their food and beverage. So that's what the penalty is there for, is to cover those opportunity costs of if your touring act does not show up. So in this case, for instance, if there was a hurricane, a tornado, artists aren't expected to drive into a hurricane to, show up for a venue, to show up at a show for something that's probably not going to be open anyway. But there gets some gray area in this whole force majeure thing, which is, for instance, let's say there was it was raining. Okay. So let's say I'm in Atlanta and I have a show in Miami. It's raining, and so my flight is delayed, which causes me to miss my show, and thus the venue has a claim for the penalty payment against me. Just because it's rain and I can't fly does not mean that that's force majeure. That's actually poor planning, because the best planning always involves the artist arriving in market much more prior to something that like a rainstorm or something like that would prevent them from playing. I personally, whenever I did a show, I always like to have my artists in market the night before. Okay, a great way to actually help make that happen is to book like radio interviews for your artist the morning of a show, so that they have to arrive and sleep and market the night before, which is has them there all day of the day of your performance, which really takes a lot of stress off you if you were on the venue side. Okay. All right, so it also includes things like provisions for travel, meals, etc. And those types of things are all outlined in something that's called a rider. And so a rider rides along with a venue contract. It's basically the details that have to do with things like the travel, lodging, meals. And we're going to include a rider in our final project. In our live event project. The reason that we're including that is really, well, sometimes people find it interesting to see what are these special requirements of different artists. But the purpose that we're including it for is really so that you can financially account for it, because riders can become very expensive very quickly. And so I'd like for you to be able to, not have exposure on that. I know for me, I was very surprised at a show that I had done that the rider cost over $4,000 to actually purchase the things that I needed to get for it. So another thing that's included on a rider is sometimes called the backline, and what that means is that's the stage setup that you would provide as the venue would provide. A lot of times that includes amplification. Oftentimes it'll include things like drum kits, things like that. And that's all to be determined with the negotiation throughout that contract for live performance. So, as I mentioned before, oftentimes an artist manager will use a booking agency to really help make sure that the show has the best possible venue that's selected for it, the opening band, that the marketplace is that the right audience for the show, that there's not a competing event locally, things like that. Booking agencies, usually work regionally, and they really know their markets really, really well. They have their fingers really on the pulse of those. Oftentimes, and I think that this is always the best way to do it. The compensation for a booking agency is done, really where it's done as a commission basis based on ticket sales. So they have kind of skin in the game to help you be able to make sure that as many people attend that performance as possible. Most large venues and large markets, for instance, only work through booking agencies. So they don't do things directly with artists and things like that. So it's really important for you as an artist manager to have good relationships with major booking agencies, and to do what you can do to position, if you're working with more of an emerging artist, position your artist as a great opening group, or how to find the best opportunities within music festivals, venues, etc., for your artists. So, when you're going on the road, some things to consider when you prepare are that you should really have tour objectives. Okay. I'm very big on tour objectives because I think it helps in really inform everything that's done. Make sure that that why, that people understand why we're going on the road. This isn't just like a spring break for the band. What this is that there's a purpose for what we're doing. Think of it for yourself when you go out of town, how expensive it is, how much money is spent on hotels, food, gas, travel, things that come up, all of those types of things. And then add into it a stage, a crew, all of those. And, it's really an expensive endeavor. Okay. So having a clear vision in terms of what's the objective is really important, so that everyone's on board for why we're making this investment of taking the group on the road. Okay. Here's just some examples. Is the purpose to promote a new release? Is the purpose to go into a new market that you don't have a large fan base in, et cetera? And just by having just that objective agreed upon, it really helps informs everything from, like, for instance, what the lead singer will say when they're on stage, all the way down to things like, what type of merch is highlighted, at the merch table. So just important to really have everybody on the same page. Really remember that your act must really be ready. This is about, when you're creating a tour, this is about having a really tight stage show, making sure that if you have choreography, lighting, all of the aspects, the wardrobe, all of the aspects really need to be put into it together in terms of a tight show, and to have that really locked down in terms of your order of what's going to be done, rehearsed, that you've had that reviewed for other aspects in terms of things that could, increase entertainment value. All of those types of things are critical. So, as the artist manager, it's really not always you who might actually go out on the road with the group, but it's important that you're not sending your group off on their own either. And that's often when you really send on your behalf a tour manager. That tour manager is really your proxy that's out in that marketplace. You need to find someone with experience and really someone that you can trust. Remember that this person is going to be that responsible party that's going to make sure that everything that you have worked to, agree to through all of those venue agreements is executed. They're going to be the person who is going to be responsible for all of your settlement with all those venues, which means counting the money at the end of the night, counting the money, both what the venue gives you, the artist manager, in terms of your percentage of ticket sales, or your agreed to payments, right, that you'd receive on site for your performance. And then on the other side, it's the people that you would give money back to for their percentage of your merchandise sales, for instance. Okay. They're also the person that's responsible for making sure that all the equipment is treated correctly, that the group is where they need to be, that anything that happens, and a lot of things can go wrong, okay, along the way, that there's somebody who's level-headed who can handle all those challenges as they come up. Okay. I've got on here also, some things that, never take your fans for granted. Is such a critical aspect, especially now in our age of social media. And so when you're looking at tour management, you really have to have a really tight plan for, how you interweave public relations, connection with, your fan clubs, fan bases, in terms of like autograph, opportunities, um, interwoven with your performances, rest for your artists, and all of your PR aspects in terms of interviews and radio and television and things like that you should have planned for each market. And your tour manager is the person who's going to make sure and oversee that all those things happen on your behalf. So, some tour ingredients. I have a long list here for you guys of things that the artist manager or road manager must do. These are really a whole list of their responsibilities, when they're on the road. I'm going to focus on this last one here because I know you guys have probably all read these bullet points by now. And sometimes this one gets overlooked, which is that the artist or tour manager really has to be proactive with relationships with any unionized venues. And the reason for that is because they have a whole set. Anything that's unionized has a whole set of specific instructions that need to be followed in terms of how to interact with those venues. And so it's really critical that you understand what those parameters are, that you develop a relationship with the foreman at each one of those locations, and that you make sure that all of your people that you have with you on the road understand those requirements as well. No better way to get your show shut down than to, not be respectful of what the unionized agreements are, because they cover key aspects, your lighting, your carrying your equipment, electrical, things like that, that if they don't want to support your event, it can shut down your entire event. So just make sure that, in addition to all the other things, which I think are more intuitive, that, you make sure that when you're going to any venue that you understand if they're union or not. As far as public relations, you need to really be proactive and have a tight plan for public relations within each market. Know that when you just send press kits, etc., things don't necessarily happen with those things without the follow up. Sometimes folks think like, oh, if I'll send comp tickets to a radio station, they'll promote my event. Well, that's not really necessarily how it works. Usually what happens is that you'll think about each market. Oftentimes with your booking agency, they'll have a promotional aspect as well. I'm always big on, as I said, always have commission based projects that are done. And so with that commission base for the for promotion, have some type of a tie-in that's done to something that you can track as far as things that they promote as far as promotional value. You can compensate them for things that they help create, not just give them a flat fee. Okay. If they'll only work for a flat fee, then the thing I try to do is I try to really make sure that they give me a lot of updates in terms of what they're doing. Like I want photographs, I want pictures, I want to know where they did promotional events. I want as much detail as I can to just really hold them accountable for that work. But back to comp tickets, like if you wanted a radio station to do a promotion, oftentimes usually what that's done is that it's done more as an exchange where, like Clear Channel, for instance, I can say, for them to promote an event, that's one of the most effective ways to promote local events is to do them still through radio. And oftentimes what they'll want you to do is buy like a series of radio spots. They'll probably also want you to do like a live remote that will be held at your show. Okay, the live remotes can cost anywhere, between $1,500 to $3,000. By the way, they'll want you to do in exchange for a promotion that they would do where they would be giving away comp tickets to your event, thus talking about your event every day during drive time radio, et cetera, in the morning and in the afternoon. They would want you to really in exchange for promotional value, then they would promote your event. So just so that everybody's clear on that. Okay. Public relations, can be done often through going around doing interviews, public appearances, those kind of things. And it's just really important to have a tight plan for what you're going to be doing for that. Some protective function documents, as they're termed. Really, what these mean are anything that are documents that can get you out of trouble along the way on the road. Okay, so this includes photocopies of all your contracts, riders, etc. Because don't rely on your laptop, don't rely on your phone. You might be in a market that you can't get cell phone coverage. You might be in a place where your laptop, oh no, it's back in my hotel room. I don't have it here with me. So I'm an old school fan of going ahead and printing stuff out, putting it in a folder and just sticking it in the trunk of the van type thing, so that you have it if you ever need a backup. I'm also really big on phone lists and not just putting those phone numbers in my phone, because what if your phone gets lost? But, for any venue, you have a main contact, you might have a backup contact. If I ever have a backup contact who gives an out of office and says, I'm out, call so and so, I write that number down too, just in case, I'm locked out of a venue in the rain, I have somebody to call. Okay. Make sure if you're going to be traveling even near any borders that you have passports. Make sure you have things like accident insurance information, credit card information. If you need, what happens if all your equipment gets stolen? Okay. If you have insurance, to back those up, make sure you have that information with you. But just because you have insurance doesn't mean you're going to be able to get an insurance claim filed and paid to you in one day, right? So it's important that you have a cash reserve or credit cards at the ready, just in case you need a backup. Okay. Vehicle repair information, all these things, these protective function documents would help you along the way in case anything goes wrong. Okay. A routing book is here at the top, and the routing book basically means a map. Okay. That lets you see what, if there's construction or there's a complete blockage on one interstate, for instance, what's a different route that you could take to get to where you need to go to. The most important item of our protective function documents is the schedule. The show schedule is what tells us everything in terms of where we need to be on the day of the show, load in, load out, rest times, rehearsals, what time security arrives, what time we're going to do a pyro check, what time there's anything outside of the actual performance, such as any personal appearances. It's really a kind of a rundown of the entire day of the day of the show, what happens at what time. Okay. Always include AM, PM, always include your time zone. Okay. Because you might have people in other time zones you need to tie into you. Like, let's say you were doing a satellite television interview and you are in Nashville. Okay. If you send that schedule out to someone and you say, 11 a.m., they may think you mean 11 a.m. Eastern because they may not be aware if Nashville is Eastern or Central, right? And so make sure that you do whatever you can do to remove any question marks that exist. Some business aspects that tour manager is responsible for is reviewing income, ticket sales, etc., doing all the settlement, as we said, making sure that you're going against your budget projections and making sure that you put those actual numbers in and see if you're on track or if you're off track. Okay. They need to communicate that back to you, the artist manager. During rehearsals, evaluate the show, ensure that you're operating on time and budget, and then deal with literally anything that can come up and occur and handle it. And make sure that they keep you, the artist manager, in the loop. After the event, I'm a really big fan of doing what are called postmortem meetings, okay, and documentation about those. Postmortem means after death. Oftentimes, these meetings are also called after action reviews. And what they are is that they are a way to make sure that any problems that might have come up during the show are addressed, and that because those things need to be addressed, it's best not to address them when they're happening and you're in the thick of it at the show. Okay, so like an example of how I might handle this is if there was an issue on the night of the show and there was an issue between two folks that were putting things together, what I would say is, let's solve it right now and just get this moving, but let's talk about it tomorrow at our postmortem meeting to make sure that like we have support that you both need so that we don't run into this issue every night. Okay. And then when you're at the postmortem meeting the next day, you basically would not point fingers, but say like, what is it that is not in our plan that didn't get accounted for that made this situation arise, and how might we solve for it going forward? Okay. After the event, you should also, of course, consult with any parties to make sure that everything worked out well. Of course, thank people, give them credit for the great work that they did, because you're probably going to be coming back through that market before you know it. Review results with the artist, of course. Make sure that the artist always has kind of a sense of continual improvement in terms of, what was great, what could, even though everything went great, what could be other things that could be done better so that they continue to improve. Review the results with the remainder of the team. Have the rest of the group, all the way down. And I have here remainder of management team, of course, would be your peers, like back in your office. But like you have, also with the team that's on the road as well, so that they feel a part of what's happening. And then, of course, get some sleep because you're going to be doing it again the next day. So, a lot of things to consider with taking the group on the road. And so, another thing I wanted to be able to share with you guys today is your live event project. Let me go ahead and open this up. So in class and on campus and online, you're going to be kind of testing your skill at putting together a live event for your artist. Okay. This project is not, due for a couple weeks, but I wanted to go ahead and review it now so that you could really have a good feel of what this project is about. We also have student examples that are posted online so you guys can get a feel, directionally for what some other folks did for this project. Really just to give you that feel of how to go ahead and jump in on this, okay? So as you can see here, you're going to be putting on a major one-night event. There's a lot of things to cover. You need to include your, logistics, media exposure, you need to consider aspects in terms of broadcasting this concert for a TV or DVD release. You need to put into your budget all of the expenses that you would have. I did events like this when I was at ESPN, because basically what you'd be doing is creating a made for TV event. So when you do a made for TV event, you have to then have all of your expenses accounted for, because all of those expenses, I mean, you don't want to, for instance, work with a booking agency or a venue, because you want to have full ownership. You want to do a full buyout of a venue so that you have all of the rights to the show that you're then producing and broadcasting. Okay. And you want to include all of your expenses, because you want to be able to put together a fully loaded income statement so that you can understand exactly how much the show is, how much revenue you're going to bring in, and then what your variable expenses are going to be, which brings you down to your gross profit, what your fixed expenses are going to be, that takes you down to your operating profit. Then what taxes you would have, which we're going to operate with a 30% corporate income tax rate on all projects we do in this course. And then ultimately what your net profit or loss is going to be. Okay, so that's what you're going to be outlining in your income statement. That would be a part of this project. Okay, include budget items for how much things are going to cost, and I'm going to be sharing with you guys some resources that'll help you with that. So here's a great summary in terms of everything that needs to be included in the project. Okay, so as you can see, background information, choice of venue, you need to include a day of show schedule and the artist rider, how much the aspects of the artist rider are going to cost needs to be included. Prepare that budget, make sure you have an income statement. You need to provide some risk analysis information, such as you did in your project and team management class. So the mitigation, like what could go wrong and how might you handle it. After the conclusion of that presentation, you then need to provide insight into your learnings about the project. And the presentation should be very creative, okay? So this project needs to be 8 minutes maximum, okay? And that's a really critical number, because we're starting to really get you guys into the practice for your final project, which is 8 minutes for the overall EBMS program. So you can see here, I've got the content and critical thinking aspects, and those are all of the requirements that were just outlined above. And here's the points that are associated with each of those sections. And then going back up into your research and professionalism, you need to ensure that in this project that you use a variety of research evidence. Okay, you need to have at least 3 text resources that are cited. So what that means is that I need to have you not just as a reference sheet at the very end of your project, but within your project itself, denote, for instance, if you say, we're going to be doing our show at the Amway Center in Orlando. The Amway Center has a maximum seating capability of 20,000 seats. You need to go ahead and denote that on that slide page, and then show me where you got that statistic that it holds 20,000 people. Show it actually on the slide itself, okay? That's what in-text resources or sourcing is. So I need for you to use at least 3. I'm sure you'll use at least, a lot more resources than just 3, but I need to make sure that you have at least 3 that are denoted as an in-text source in that way. Make sure you cite all sources, as well. 8-minute maximum, as we said. Free of grammar, spelling errors. Make sure you check, especially sometimes I see a lot of mistakes that are made like in income statements, because I think people put those in Excel and they don't necessarily spell check them. You have an uncapped 1 point off for each non-repetitive typo or error. Timeliness, 20% of this project is ensuring that it's turned in on time. And then there's going to be a peer review aspect of the project that would be outlined as well. Okay. So make sure if you're repeating this course, all work needs to be original to this month's class. And so if you've done this project before, you need to do a new and original project that's different from what you've done in the past. So that just takes you a little bit through that live event project. And remember, we also have student examples that are posted to give you a little bit more background on that. For a couple of resources that I wanted to be able to share, I'm going to be posting a video that's called Live Events, What It Takes. This will be on the board for our online students with your project next week, so you can watch that then. But then also, I wanted to just click on and share with you guys several different project resources that are all posted under resources for you guys. So here's, for instance, a great resource website that shows you booking fees for most large touring acts. So let me go ahead and open that up for you. So this website's called Main Stage Productions, and you can see it's got a lot of different headers here, and it tells you, for several, so many large acts, how much is the average they're getting paid. Now, if you don't find the exact act that you're planning on doing for this project on this list, that's fine. Just use someone who is close to who you are, to who your artist is in stature and audience size, etc., to help you estimate how much they would charge. Audience sizes are sometimes a real challenge for folks to put together, like when they try to figure out what type of venue their artist would like what size venue, like what would be the size of the audience, or how much would you charge for tickets, etc. So you can see here, like we're starting to have a ticket, track go across an average ticket price, and then you can basically look up any artist here on Pollstar, and you can start to see what are some of the sizes of the shows that they do to give you a real feel for kind of what size venue should you be going after for your venue selection. All right, going down then into day of show schedule. This is a great resource that is called Concert Ideas. And Concert Ideas, all you do is you just need to click on resources here. It'll take you to that event planning resources. And there's lots of great stuff here, like an event checklist, how to do effective marketing, a sample of a student volunteer contract. Here's an example of a day of show schedule, which is one of the requirements of your project. Only thing I would put on here, as I said, because I've been burned by it before, is make sure you put Eastern time, Central time, Mountain time, etc. Add that to your day of show schedule. Okay. Here's also another source if you're trying to get a feel for like what was required for stage performances, lighting requirements, production requirement, how do you do event marketing, things like that. Upstaging is a great resource for this, and so I just wanted to point you towards this as another resource. We also have a great resource that's been posted on FSO, and this is in FSO resources for you. It's in a sample equipment pricing sheet. We had a former student of ours who worked at a large tour support organization, and so she shared that pricing list to give you guys a way to kind of price out a lot of the aspects for your shows. Last but not least, this is a resource for riders for most large touring acts. It's on the Smoking Gun, which is kind of a questionable website, right? But anyway, basically you can scroll down. You can see most large groups will have their riders that are posted here. Most riders are just done, in text, where, for instance, you can see here, just picking a random one. You can see it's a text document, and it'll take you through most of the aspects in terms of what they required. A lot of these are ones that have been uploaded, I think, by student organizations that hosted different entertainers at their universities and things like that. And so one thing that's critical to notice about these is that a lot of these riders will actually have a lot of markouts that are done through them. And so that's a really good thing for you to know when you receive a rider, if you ever work at a venue, or if you're an artist manager and you're negotiating with a venue and you see them strike things out, is that it's a negotiation what's in a rider as well. Just because something's written in the rider doesn't mean you have to take it as it's written. Like, for instance, if you did a show with Lil Wayne, you can open up his here on this page. You'll see that he requires, if he travels to you, he must travel by Learjet. So that's about a $25,000, $30,000 expense right there, that if you just signed it as is, then you have just agreed contractually to provide that Learjet. So make sure you read the riders, make sure that you know how much they're going to cost, and know that you can negotiate and mark things out, etc., as you go along the way. So that's really what I had to share with you all today. And I hope this has been a helpful review. And know, of course, if you have any questions, feel free to call Jill and I at any time. And if you are one of our online students, this is a supplement that you will watch. In addition to this video, you'll watch our content video for the week as well. And if you're one of our campus students, that your next step is to go ahead and do the reflection assignment. So that's not required for our online students, but just required for our campus students. Okay, take care, everybody, and reach out to Jill and I if you need anything at all. Have a great week.